They mocked our diplomacy, so we spoke in force. Nadira's crystalline fingers traced the delicate petals of a luminescent flower, its pale blue glow matching the subtle shimmer of her skin. The garden of stellar harmony stretched before her, floating segments of engineered asteroid connected by bridges of pure light. Each section housed different species of spaceborne flora, creating a tapestry of colors that rivaled the nebulae visible from her observation dome. As a celestial botanist, Nadira had spent the last 3 cycles cultivating what many considered impossible flowers that bloomed in the void of space. Her people, the Astrani, were known throughout the galaxy for their connection to cosmic energies, but she had chosen a path few of her kind understood. While others shaped starlight into weapons or shields, she coaxed it into creating life. "Another successful bloom," she whispered to herself, recording the growth patterns of the stellar twilight rose in her digital journal. The flower's petals sparkled with tiny points of light, like stars caught in crystal. It was her newest hybrid, combining the resilience of deep space algae with the beauty of ancient Earth roses. The peaceful moment shattered as warning lights flashed across her sanctuary's defensive shields. A ship, trailing plasma and debris, was on a collision course with the garden's outer rim. Nadira's hearts raced, both of them accelerating in perfect synchronization as she activated her emergency protocols. "Visitor, adjust your trajectory immediately," she broadcast on all frequencies, her melodic voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent years protecting her life's work. "You're approaching a protected botanical sanctuary." The ship's response came in bursts of static, but she caught fragments of words. "Controls damaged. Emergency landing. Apologies." Making a split-second decision, Nadira diverted power to a specific section of the shield, creating a controlled entry point. Better a guided crash than random destruction through her garden. Her fingers danced across the control panel, creating a pathway of gravitational fields to guide the wounded vessel. The ship, she now saw it was a merchant vessel of Verdani design, scraped through her shields and came to rest in what she called her welcoming garden, a relatively empty section she kept for new specimens. Emerald sparks flew as the ship's hull cooled, mixing with the ambient light of her bioluminescent path markers. Nadira grabbed her emergency kit and made her way to the crash site. The ship's hull bore the scars of meteor impacts, suggesting its pilot had attempted to navigate through an unmarked debris field. As she approached, the entry hatch burst open in a cloud of sweet-smelling vapor, a Verdani environmental stabilizer. A figure emerged, and Nadira felt her secondary heart skip a beat. The pilot was tall, even for a Verdani, with skin the color of young leaves in springtime. Intricate patterns of darker green traced his exposed arms, marking him as someone from the southern forests of his homeworld. His eyes, when they met hers, were the gold of distant suns. "I apologize for dropping in so," he coughed, waving away some of the vapor. "Unceremoniously, I'm Thuron, independent merchant and apparently terrible navigator." Despite his situation, a smile played at the corners of his mouth. Nadira found herself returning the smile, even as she ran her medical scanner over him. "You're lucky to be alive. This sector isn't kind to those who stray from the established shipping lanes." She paused, nodding his vital signs were stable. "I'm Nadira, curator of this garden." "A garden?" Thuron looked around, really taking in his surroundings for the first time. His golden eyes widened as he noticed the floating beds of flowers, the crystalline trees that grew without soil, sustained by starlight and cosmic energy. "By the first forest, I thought these were just stories, the famous void gardens of the Astrani." "We prefer stellar botanical sanctuary," Nadira corrected gently, "but yes, you've crashed into one of the few places in the galaxy where flowers bloom in space." She gestured to the damage on his ship. "You'll need repairs before you can leave. The nearest spaceport is 3 days' journey at best." Thuron ran a hand through his hair, which Nadira noticed had the same varied shades as a healthy leaf canopy. "I don't suppose you'd consider hosting a stranded merchant until I can arrange repairs. I have some rare seeds from the outer rim that might interest a botanist of your caliber." Before she could respond, one of her newest specimens, a climbing vine that reacted to emotional energy, began to curl toward them both, its flowers opening to reveal centers that pulsed with soft pink light. Nadira felt her face warm, the bioluminescent patterns on her cheeks brightening slightly. "The garden seems to have voted in your favor," she said, trying to maintain her professional demeanor despite the treacherous vines display. "I have a spare hab unit where you can stay, but first let me show you around. There are certain protocols you'll need to follow. Some of these species are quite sensitive." As they walked along the luminous paths between floating garden sections, Nadira found herself stealing glances at her unexpected guest. There was something about the way he moved, careful and respectful of his surroundings, that put her at ease. Most visitors treated her garden as a curiosity, but Thuron watched each plant with genuine wonder. "That one," he said, pointing to a cluster of crystal-like flowers that chimed softly in the artificial breeze. "It reminds me of the singing forests back home, though these chimes are more stellar." "The resonating crystal bloom," Nadira explained, pleased by his observation. "They communicate through vibrations, creating melodies that help nearby plants grow stronger. Would you like to hear their evening song? It's almost time." Thuron's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "I would love to." As they stood together, watching the crystal flowers begin their ethereal performance, Nadira felt something she hadn't experienced in all her cycles tending the garden alone. A sense that perhaps her sanctuary had been waiting for more than just the next bloom. The vine from earlier had followed them, its pink-centered flowers now creating a gentle arch overhead. She would have to have a serious talk with that vine about subtlety later. But for now, as the crystal blooms sang to the stars, Nadira allowed herself to enjoy the company of her unexpected guest, wondering what other surprises this collision of paths might bring. 3 days into his stay at the Stellar Sanctuary, Thuron discovered that watching Nadira work was like witnessing a dance. Her blue-skinned form moved with practiced grace between the floating garden platforms, her crystalline fingers weaving patterns in the air as she channeled cosmic energy to nurture her extraordinary specimens. "The trick," she explained while demonstrating the proper care of a moonlight orchid, "is to understand that these flowers don't just need nutrients and light. They need harmony." The white petals of the orchid sparkled as she adjusted its position relative to a nearby star's radiation. "Every plant has its own song in the cosmic symphony." Thuron sat cross-legged on a transparent platform, making notes in his trader's journal. He'd originally planned to document potentially valuable botanical specimens, but increasingly found himself sketching Nadira instead. The way her hair floated like dark nebulae when she moved in zero gravity. How her skin's bioluminescent patterns brightened when she was excited about a new bloom. "We have something similar in the Verdani forests," he offered, quickly flipping to a new page when she glanced his way. "Each tree has its own resonance. When they grow together, they create what we call the forest's chorus." Nadira's secondary heart fluttered at the passion in his voice. Over the past few days, she'd learned that beneath his merchant's pragmatism lay a soul that truly understood beauty. "Show me," she said, extending her hand. "How do your people tend to the forest's music?" Thuron stood, his green skin taking on a deeper hue that she'd learned meant he was pleased. He took her hand, his touch sending a warm current through her crystalline fingers. "We dance with them," he said softly. "Like this." He guided her through a series of flowing movements, explaining how Verdani forest tenders would move with the trees swaying, their steps and gestures helping to direct nutrients and energy through the root systems. Nadira found herself following naturally, their bodies moving in harmony as they wove between the floating garden beds. The ever-troublesome emotional vine had spread further through this section of the garden, its pink-centered flowers opening wide as the pair danced past. Other plants began to respond. The resonating crystal blooms chimed in harmony with their movements, and streams of bioluminescent pollen swirled around them like stardust. "Your garden is dancing with us," Thuron whispered, his golden eyes reflecting the spectacular light show their impromptu performance had created. Nadira laughed, a sound like wind chimes that made several nearby flowers pulse with light. "They've never been this reactive before. Perhaps they've been waiting for a forest touch." They came to a natural stop at the edge of the platform, the garden's lights slowly settling around them. Thuron kept hold of her hand, his thumb tracing the luminescent patterns that swirled across her wrist. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I've visited 100 worlds, traded with 1,000 species, but I've never seen anything quite like this place. Like you." The patterns on Nadira's cheeks brightened at his words, and she noticed the green of his skin deepening in response. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. A soft, alert chime broke the spell. "The solar shields need adjusting," Nadira said, reluctantly pulling away. "Would you like to learn how they work? It's not unlike tending to your forest canopy." "I'd like that," Thuron replied, following her to the control station. As she explained the complex system of energy fields that protected her garden from harsh stellar radiation, he found himself more fascinated by her than the technology. The way she spoke about her work, the gentle authority in her voice, the genuine love she had for every living thing in her care, it all drew him in deeper. "These readings are unusual," Nadira murmured, frowning at a display showing energy patterns from a nearby star. "The radiation levels are increasing faster than normal for this sector." "Could it be dangerous?" Thuron asked, nodding her concern. "Not with our current shielding, but—" She bit her lower lip, a gesture he'd come to recognize as her planning expression. "Would you help me set up some additional monitoring arrays? Better to be cautious." They spent the next few hours working together, installing sensor pods throughout the garden. Thuron found that his experience maintaining ship systems translated well to Nadira's more specialized equipment. As they worked, they shared stories. She told him about her first successful void bloom, a tiny star flower that had defied all expectations to survive in pure space. He spoke of his childhood in the singing forests, and how he'd taken to the stars seeking new wonders but never quite found what he was looking for. "Until now, perhaps," he added quietly, catching her eye as they finished calibrating the last sensor. Before Nadira could respond, a new alert sounded, different from the routine chimes of the garden systems. A communication request marked urgent. "Sanctuary Keeper Nadira," a melodic voice filled the control room as she accepted the transmission. "This is Vesper of the Stellar Concordat. I bring warnings of grave importance regarding astronomical events in your sector." Thuron watched the subtle shift in Nadira's expression, concern, determination, and something else. The professional mask of a sanctuary keeper sliding back into place. But when she glanced his way, he saw in her eyes the same connection that had been growing between them all day. Whatever warning this Vesper brought, Thuron knew his decision to stay and help was already made. Some things, he was learning, were worth more than any cargo or trade route. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries weren't found in distant markets, but in gardens that danced among the stars. Vesper's arrival transformed the peaceful sanctuary into a flutter of activity. The purple-skinned diplomat emerged from their crystalline ship like flowing water, their iridescent robes shifting colors with each movement. Multiple sets of violet eyes, a trait of their species' evolutionary adaptation to complex astronomical calculations, scanned the garden with evident concern. "The Stellar Concordat sends its regards," Vesper announced, their voice carrying musical undertones that made the nearest crystal blooms resonate. "Though I wish this visit came under better circumstances." Nadira stood formally at the docking platform's edge, though Thuron noticed her fingers absently intertwining with a strand of the ever-present emotional vine. Its flowers had shifted from their usual pink to a wary orange. "Welcome to the Sanctuary of Stellar Harmony," she replied. "Your message mentioned astronomical concerns." Vesper's multiple eyes blinked in synchronized patterns. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private." They cast a meaningful glance at Thuron, who tried not to take offense at the diplomatic dismissal. "Thuron stays," Nadira said firmly, her blue skin shimming with enhanced bioluminescence. "He's been helping me monitor the unusual stellar activity in this sector." A slight smile curved Vesper's lips. "Ah, I see. Very well." They produced a holographic display from within their robes. "What you've been detecting is only the beginning. A massive solar storm is forming in the nearby Crimson Nebula. Our calculations suggest it will reach this sector within 5 standard days. The projection showed waves of stellar energy, beautiful but deadly, sweeping through space. Thuron watched Nadira's expression shift as she processed the implications. He'd learned to read the subtle changes in her bioluminescent patterns. The current configuration spoke of deep worry. The sanctuary's shields weren't designed for that level of radiation, she said quietly. Some of these species are the last of their kind. If we lose them, the Concordat is evacuating all non-essential operations from the affected sectors, Vesper continued. We can provide transport for you and any portable specimens. No, Nadira's response was immediate. Most of these plants can't survive conventional transport. They're integrated with the sanctuary systems. Moving them would kill them just as surely as the storm. Thuron stepped forward, his trader's mind already calculating possibilities. What about strengthening the existing shields? My ship's cargo hold contains some rare energy crystals from the outer rim. They're not exactly legal in Concordat space, but they might help amplify our defensive systems, Nadira finished, her eyes brightening. The emotional vine's flowers shifted to a hopeful yellow. Vesper's multiple eyes narrowed. The possession of unauthorized energy crystals is a serious offense, which becomes irrelevant if this sanctuary and its irreplaceable specimens are destroyed, Thuron countered. The green patterns on his arms darkened with intensity. Sometimes preservation requires working outside conventional boundaries. A tense moment passed as Vesper studied them both. Finally, their shoulders relaxed slightly. Officially, I cannot endorse the use of restricted materials. Unofficially, I may be able to delay filing my report about this sector for a few days. Whatever you plan to do, do it quickly. After sharing more detailed data about the approaching storm, Vesper departed, their crystalline ship dissolving into the starfield like morning dew. Nadira immediately turned to the sanctuary's control systems, her fingers dancing across holographic displays as she ran calculations. The crystals could work, she muttered, more to herself than Thuron. If we reconfigure the shield grid and use the garden's own harmonic frequencies to amplify the power distribution. She paused, looking up at him. But Thuron, those crystals must be worth a fortune in unregulated space. I can't ask you to. He crossed the room and took her hands in his, marveling at how natural it felt now, the way her crystalline fingers fit perfectly between his forest-patterned ones. You're not asking. I'm offering. Besides, he smiled, what good is a fortune if all the beautiful things in the galaxy are gone? The emotional vine, which had somehow found its way into the control room, burst into brilliant pink blooms above them. Nadira laughed despite the gravity of their situation. That vine is getting entirely too invested in our conversations. Smart vine, Thuron murmured, reaching up to touch one of the flowers. It knows what's important. They worked through the sanctuary's night cycle, preparing for the modifications. Thuron's ship repair skills complemented Nadira's deep understanding of the garden systems. As they moved through the floating platforms, rerouting power conduits and installing crystal arrays, their movements fell into the same natural harmony they'd found while dancing.